So, you're here to see some early 2000s YA romance novel content, huh? You're in luck. I think I got something right here for you. Yep, there we go. Just blow the dust off of that. Here she is in all her beauty. The Forbidden Game trilogy by L.J. Smith. And yes, that L.J. Smith, the one who wrote The Vampire Diaries. Most people don't know, or at least don't acknowledge, that she's had plenty of other book series, and The Forbidden Game was hands down my favorite series when I was 10 or 11 or something. My girl L.J. Smith really likes to separate her stories into chunks to maximize that profit. Her Night World series consists of 9 books, and you can find them sometimes grouped into 3 anthologies. But if you're into The Vampire Diaries, I feel sorry for you because she has created no less than 22 books within the universe. Honestly, between Night World and Vampire Diaries and H2O, as a kid I was convinced that if I wished hard enough, I could become a mermaid vampire. Today I thought I would begin my own trilogy. 3 videos where I recount the story of The Forbidden Game and share with you guys all of the gloriously unhinged plot details of this series. It's wild and dramatic and kind of dumb and everything else you'd imagine when thinking of a YA novel series, but I found myself strangely hooked on the storyline despite its various flaws, and look, you just need to watch the video and find out. Without further ado, in this video we're going to be taking a long look at the first book in the Forbidden Game series, The Hunter. I realize this is going to be a long video, and just showing static images of book pages isn't really the most interesting visual. So because we're discussing an early 2000s media aimed towards girly teens at the time, I decided to use dress-up game characters to illustrate the book's plot. You know, because those were also early 2000s girly teen things, at least for me as a kid. As we introduce characters, I'll add them to our little scene. And whenever the book mentions a new outfit for somebody, I'm going to try my best to match the outfit of the model to the outfit of the character in the story. Also, with some of these book descriptions of the outfits, I really try to match them to these dress-up games, but sometimes they're just a little strange and very hard to pair up. And I try to Frankenstein things together as much as possible, but if something just doesn't match up, please forgive me. Also, they're gonna look like little scraps of paper, and you'll see why later. Just know that it's very on theme and it's very clever of me, and you're welcome. All right, let's start the story. Our main it girl of the series is high school junior Jenny Thornton. Thornton. She's trying to live, laugh, love her way down a city street when, 2 big bad boys are stalking her, so she's freaking out. One of the boys has a black shirt with a leather vest and a bandana, and the other boy has an unbuttoned flannel. Jenny, these aren't robbers. These are e-boys on their way to the nearest park to film TikToks. Anyway, Jenny scolds herself for going into the bad area of town, but she says she needed to be there so she can prevent her friends from seeing her do something that isn't revealed yet in the narrative. Also, just FYI, Jenny does catch her reflection in a store window as she's trying to hide from these bad guys. Slender hair that was the color of honey in the sunlight. Her eyebrows were straight like 2 decisive brushstrokes, and her forest green eyes were as dark as pine needles and even more serious than usual. So yeah, I just thought you'd like to know that. It's hilarious because it's like the 9th paragraph into the first chapter of the book. Like, LJ really wanted to establish these fan fiction levels of beauty before her readers could get ahead of themselves. We learn that Jenny is out in a rough part of town shopping for a birthday party gift for her boyfriend, Tom Locke, because it's currently his B-Day. She's looking for a cool game to play at a party that will impress all her friends because she's hosting the party and she doesn't want it to be a major flop. And that's why she's trying to be secretive, going to different parts of town that her friends won't be in so that they don't know what she's planning. Jenny and all of her friends are in high school. They're juniors, which means that Jenny is 16, which means that I might as well go ahead and start up a felony counter for the video. I won't because that's too much work, but just keep her age in mind. While hiding from the bad dudes, Jenny is staring at a mural painted on a wall, and the mural has a door on it, and suddenly the door is 3D. And she can see that there's an actual doorknob. So without question, she just goes in. Conveniently, it just happens to be a game store that she stumbles into, and the store sells slightly cursed games like a triangular chessboard and ancient carved game pieces that look like bone and differently sized dice and card decks. But like, regardless, somehow you know they still have Uno somewhere in there. Jenny's staring at all of this weird stuff when someone starts talking to her, and so she turns and she loses her breath. This hot ass guy is standing there with an unbelievable set of deep crystal blue eyes. Jenny says it's like the glimpse you get when you wake up at the precise instant of dawn. Okay, this guy's eyelashes are thick, black, but his hair is, oh no, it's white. You guys, he has white hair. It's so sad because the last time I read this book had to have been like 10 years ago, yet somehow I instinctively remember Jenny being blonde with green eyes and this guy having white hair, blue eyes. Like, this information never left my psyche, even though calculus too is long gone. Anyway, the book directly describes this shop guy as being beautiful, but like in an exotic kind of way. So the instant that Jenny sees this boy, she has like a hard factory reset, and the entire concept of her boyfriend Tom instantly leaves her mind. Reminder that it's Tom's birthday at the moment. Jenny, way to be loyal. Apparently this dude also just happens to look like he's close to Jenny's age. Okay. Oh, and even better, we do have an outfit for him. He was dressed in all black in a weird combination of cyberpunk and a Byronic poet. So I'm thinking Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul. Anyway, my man stays in customer service mode the entire time he talks to her. He's just like, yeah, can I help you, ma'am? Jenny doesn't really want any of the cursed games in the shop, but sister is between a rock and a hard place right now. The hard place being the harsh streets outside where she will get stabbed by those guys, and the rock being the rock hard abs of this shop employee. She tells Mystery Man that she's buying a game for her boyfriend. I have a boyfriend. But he doesn't care. He doesn't blink. He does not take a breath. I'm sure his molecular cells don't even divide at her mention of Tom Locke. Instead, he just casually gives her a little tour around the shop, offering her all sorts of games. And while he's doing that, Jenny's like, I'm feeling a little uneasy because this guy's like starting to smile at her and he's like buttering her up. And so Jenny's like, I take it all back. You know what? Let me just reel in all those compliments I threw earlier on because maybe you're the number one creep here and those guys outside were just trying to sell me Girl Scout cookies. Jenny turns to take her business elsewhere, but then, like any normal human being, Mr. Man starts spouting some weird stuff. Her back is to him and he's like, danger, seduction, fear. Jenny's like, sorry, you what? And so he just keeps going and he starts talking sexily about desires unveiled and how he knows she's been looking for a board game this whole time. And he's like, oh, you know what? We might have something special for you in the back. Let me just, oh wow, here we go. He pulls out this Monopoly looking box that is completely white with no outer markings on it. But Jenny's drawn to this white box and she's like, gimme. But he's playing coy. He starts selling this falsity that the game is super rare and she's not even good enough to play it. He's negging her like crazy, so now she wants it even more. Also, in between all of this happening, there are throwaway lines in the book that are like, oh yeah, by the way, he has a snake tattoo on his wrist. Oh yeah, he has an earring too. As if LJ kept thinking of new ways to make him even more dangerous and seductive halfway through writing the scene. Jenny caves in and buys the box, and there's a moment when she's paying him for it, and he opens the cash register, and Jenny can see different types of archaic money. Jenny, girl, how dense are you? You're seeing square coins and pieces of bones in the register. Why aren't you running? Girl could literally be seeing ancient human sacrifices stuffed in the cash register as a form of payment, and she'd be like, wow, is that Norwegian? Jenny, no. She buys the game out of peer pressure from this beautiful boy, and she leaves the store while this guy watches her, and he smirks smirkily with his smirkishness. She glances back at him and sees that he's standing in the shadows with a hungry look in his eyes right before she closes the door to the shop. Girlies, if he's half cloaked in shadow with a hungry look in his eyes, maybe he's not the one for you. Jenny goes home and she sprints into her house to try to start setting up the birthday party, which she's hosting like all by herself apparently. And she's trying to do it before all of her friends get there. And the book describes her movement as like galloping into her kitchen, which I think is hilarious. Her best friend Dee has essentially broken into Jenny's house to help out with the party. And Jenny ain't expecting her to be there. But Dee is already at the kitchen and she's like, I know you're stressing out, so I'm here to help. Just want you guys to know that Dee is also the black friend because LJ writes that she's as beautiful as an African priestess. Okay. Trust me, if it were just this one line, I would not have included it in this script, but I regret to inform you that it just keeps getting so much worse. You will see later on in the book. But Dee isn't the only one there to help. Jenny's other bestie, Audrey, is there, and she's cooking a bangin' stir-fry meal to save Jenny's ass from hosting a horrible party. And in this scene, it's revealed that Audrey and Dee are good friends of Jenny, but they aren't good friends themselves. So there's like angry tension between them all the time. Jenny tells them both to be nice to each other for once, and Audrey just says, oh, go to your room and become beautiful. I have no words for this. So accordingly, Jenny heads up to change for the party to impress her BF. In her room, she's thinking about Tom and how they've been together since they were 8 years old. Okay. She has a stuffed animal on the dresser with I love you stitched across it. And she says to herself, Oh, how romantic. The fact that Tom wouldn't say those words to me in public just makes this secret confession all the sweeter. Girl, run away. He's unable to articulate his feelings, so he buys you a $4 plushie to do it for him. I don't know if we should be giving him props here. Also, here we get the very first outfit change of the video. Ginny puts her hair in a ponytail and puts on a long floor-length skirt. When she goes back downstairs, Audrey tells her that she's too prude and that her boyfriend Tom is going to get bored of her if she keeps doing this, which will cause him to move on or cheat on her, and that it's Ginny's responsibility to stay fresh and unpredictable and keep his attention. Wow. And Audrey says that she's the expert because she does that for her boy toy named Michael. And she openly jokes to Ginny that she's only keeping Michael strung along in a relationship until Audrey moves on to the next guy. And she literally refers to her boyfriend Michael as a bookmark. You deserve to be alone. Speaking of boys, Michael and Zach arrive to the party. Michael is described as being shaped like a teddy bear and has the eyes of a sarcastic spaniel. Now, LJ, what the hell does this even mean? He's warm and friendly, and he's very much in love with Audrey, even though we all know by now that Audrey barely tolerates him. The other guy, Zach, is Ginny's cousin, but there's this weird vibe between them. Like, as Ginny greets him, she kisses him on the cheek, and she says that his winter gray eyes soften at her for a moment. Okay, these are normal interactions for cousins. Everyone's dynamic in this room is rancid. Here's the personality breakdown for everybody. Michael is the chubby jokester kid. Zach is the artistic loner. Audrey is the prep snobby rich girl. Dee is bold and brave and athletic. But if you think that that cast is already too large to keep track of, there are two more on the way. Enter Summer Parker Pearson, who is described as shy and quiet and innocent, and enter Tom Locke himself with his dark brown hair and his, quote, simple clothes like other guys, but somehow he wore them differently, end quote. Now the gang's all here. Ginny the practical, Dee the bold, Audrey the sassy, Michael the goofy, Zach the loner, Summer the sweet, and Tom the... Tom. I do not have a personality for him just yet. Tom the decent. Ginny looks over to see that Tom has opened the white Monopoly box, even though she was kind of trying to hide it from everybody because she was like, I'm still not feeling it. I'm still not feeling good about this moment. And so at first she's kind of freaking out. She's like, you guys, this game is kind of stupid. Like, you guys don't want to play it anyway. I bet it's childish. I'm sensing a bit of a menacing aura coming from it. You know. Everyone brushes her concerns off, and her friends open the box to start playing the game. The forbidden game, that is. So the contents of the box are game instructions, a paper dollhouse model that you slot together, scraps of loose paper, and game cards with prompts on them. Instantly, Ginny's friends are gathered around eating their stir-fry, tinkering on the cute little paper dollhouse to assemble it. By the end of it, they have a deluxe 3-story Victorian paper doll house. Tom starts reading the game instructions, and it asks each player to create a paper doll of themselves as a playing piece. So they find a tub of crayons lying somewhere and they start drawing themselves on these pieces of paper. Also, according to the instructions, the goal of the game is for players to move their paper dolls through the dollhouse until they reach the top floor and win the game. The only catch is there's a different nightmare in every room. And then the other catch is, besides the nightmares in each room, you gotta watch out for these two monsters called the Creeper and the Lurker, which are a giant snake and giant werewolf respectively. And also the other thing, besides the nightmares and besides the Creeper and the Lurker, you kind of also have to watch out for the big baddie of the game, which is the Shadow Man. Suddenly the room goes quiet and everyone's looking at each other. Wow. The Shadow Man sure sounds scary. Now, fellas, you talked to me about a dangerous, mysterious being called the Shadow Man, and I am already clutching my drawing utensils, making fan art of the sexiest Tumblr creature I can possibly conceive. I will not be scared of him. I will find a way to aggressively transform him. It is what I do. I have always been an advocate for villain thoughtification. Anyway, everyone has to start making their doll replicas, and they all have to draw their worst nightmares because in order for the game to scare them, it has to be like a little personal. So you're telling me that this game came in a blank box with bare bones instructions in it and a dollhouse that they had to assemble and playing pieces that they had to draw and nightmares that they had to create? We love a DIY project, but this game probably cost Ginny $20 and yet the players have to make up 90% of the material. This sounds like a scam. While everyone's drawing their nightmares on little pieces of paper, Ginny has to contemplate her worst nightmare, but she can't. We find out that she does have a recurring nightmare that terrifies her, but it's a literal nightmare, as in she has bad dreams, but she wakes up and she can't remember her own fear. She does know that whatever it is, it's some sort of repressed memory from her childhood, but it's kind of hard to draw the vague concept of a broken childhood, so instead she just draws Nothing. Like literally nothing. Everyone else finishes their nightmare drawings and they put them in one big pile, and Ginny just puts her blank piece of paper in there. Summer, meanwhile, is looking through the box and she finds playing pieces for the creeper and the lurker. And then she says, the shadow man can shadow me if he wants. I think he's cute. You know what? She's so real for that. And so she hands the playing piece over to Ginny, and uh-oh, guess what, you guys? The shadow man is the hot ass anime boy from the game store. Who would have guessed? Wow, this is so unexpected. It's almost as if this board game is tied to like real life all of a sudden. Nevertheless, Ginny gatekeep girl boss gaslights herself into thinking that maybe the sexy guy at the shop was just really into this board game. So like maybe he's just doing a little cosplay moment and he's cosplaying this pre-existing character, and that's why they look so similar. Tom absolutely does not notice or care that she's not having a good time with all of the nightmare talk and, you know, seeing the shadow man playing piece. So he just bulldozes his way through the game instructions. Now they're on the final task before the game can start. All they have to do is swear an oath written on the game box to begin the game. RIP to these youth, but I simply would never be in a situation like this. The sheer amount of instructions alone means that I'm very unlikely to ever have the energy to perform a ritual or sacrilegious rite. I'm a lazy gal. Anyway, these crazy kids think it's all in good fun, so they all say the oath out loud, and it involves like, oh, we know that we're playing a dangerous game and blah, 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 and what's real in the game is real in real life, whatever. Once they finish reciting it, it's official. They are all playing the game. That's the actual name of it in the book. It's just referred to as the game. Things start off pretty strongly. Just like Jumanji or Zathura, everyone's pulling cards and the cards are describing something, and then boom, that thing actually happens in reality. Summer pulls a card that says, you hear footsteps, and then they all hear footsteps in the house. Riveting stuff. As you'd expect, every time this happens, they all find perfect ways to write it off as coincidences. But the game starts closing off their exits. Tom pulls a card that says, the door won't open. So Tom gets up and he's like, you got it. Well, Tom, the door won't open. It's jammed. And everyone begins panicking. Zach pulls a card that says, you hear a clock strike 9. And sure enough, there's the sound of a clock striking 9 p.m. The spookiest hour. Oh yeah, and suddenly there's a giant tornado-like vortex of wind that sweeps the party up and knocks them all out. Oh, sorry, you might have missed that. Let me repeat that. First the doors lock, then the windows lock, then a clock strikes, then a hurricane wind enters the room and they all pass out. So things are escalating. Ginny wakes up. She looks around. She's in the Victorian house. That's not right. It's the same house that they just saw in the paper doll house, but it's not paper anymore. It's the real environment. They're all in the fictional parlor that their board game was supposed to have started in, but it's real life. Wow. They realize they've been transported into the house and now they're the paper dolls, metaphorically. Like they're not made of paper or anything. They're just in the house as if they were their own playing pieces now. Everyone's freaking out. There's a moment when someone talks about it possibly being virtual reality, and Dee says, no way, my mom's a computer expert. She knows what real VR is, not like Pac-Man. I'm sorry, what? Right away, all of Ginny's agency is out the paper house window. She spends most of this scene panicking and clinging to Tom and staring at Tom or trying to figure out what Tom is thinking. And I just want to walk up to her and give her a buy one, get one free coupon for self-esteem and independence. Meanwhile, Tom is instantly trying to go full main character mode, and so he starts ordering people around, trying to rally the group up so they can all split up and investigate their surroundings. But before he can fully lay claim to his Chad status, a hotter guy suddenly steps toward the group from out of the shadows. Okay, yeah, we all know by now, it's the Shadow Man. And once again, Ginny sees him and she's like, damn, he's kind of exotic. Also, we get a new outfit description for him. Great. He's smiling and cheesing at them. He's like, welcome to my abode. I really made sure to lay out the finest cobwebs for you guys. I put the extra thick coating of dust on the furniture. You're welcome. Ginny's friends are like, yo, who the F is this? Turns out Shadow Man has a name, and he tells them it's Julian. He basically gives them a rundown on how they've been sucked into his magical game and that they've invoked his runes and pierced the veil between worlds. I can't believe all of you guys invoked the Shadow Man's runes and you pierced the veil between worlds and none of you bought him dinner first. Julian tells them that he's used his shadow magic to trap them in his realm and make them play a game. Everyone's like, okay, so what? Julian says, well, if you win the game, you all get to live and go back to your world. But if I win the game, let me see. Eeny, meeny, miny, Ginny has to stay behind and become my eternal prize. Like, moment of silence, okay. Ginny's friends obviously aren't having that. Tom instantly jumps towards Julian, but Julian does like a Naruto jutsu and Tom is suddenly jumping around screaming at these invisible creatures on the floor that nobody else can see, but only he can see. Jenny's like, "What have you done?" And Julian tells her that he's used Tom's nightmare against him, just a little bit, as a treat. Jenny tries to snap Tom out of his sheer terror, but in the middle of it, Julian teleports all of her friends away, and then it's just the two of them in the room. A little one-on-one time. Julian tells her that he's scattered her friends around different areas of the house and they're all facing their nightmares at the moment and she needs to go find them and save them. So technically, I guess that means only Jenny is the real main player of the game and the rest of her friends were so annoying that Julian demoted them to NPCs. He mentions that her friends are on different floors of the house and that Jenny is free to find them as she goes through the levels of the house. He mentions that Tom, however, is off limits and that Julian will be giving him special attention. All right. Basically, Julian is on some season 0 Yami Yugi shit with the demented shadow games and twisting reality and whatnot. Men will literally kidnap the girl they like and force them to reality shift into the shadowverse instead of going to therapy. Is it wrong of me to already be fond of him? I was when I was 11 and I still am now. He's such a little scamp. Anyway, back to the scene. Julian keeps it nice and simple. Number 1, she needs to travel through each floor of the house to save her friends. Number 2, they all need to get to the top of the mansion where there's going to be a portal back to their world. Number 3, anyone who leaves the portal will be sent back to the real world and can live normally, minus extensive years of therapy and rehabilitation, I'm guessing. So those are the 3 criteria for Jenny to win. But Julian says that he wins if Jenny and her friends don't escape before dawn. So we're dealing with a time limit game. Also, if Julian wins, Jenny will casually become his bride and stay trapped in the realm with him forever. So in my eyes, as a reader, that's a win-win situation. I'm just kidding. I would like to state here officially on the record that I do not condone Julian's actions here, and this is objectively horrible. Honestly, if he wasn't described as having white hair, I think I would have been utterly disgusted with his character, but come on, you guys, white-haired boys are my passion. Jenny's not having any of this. She gets mad at Julian. She starts berating him and he's like, "Girl, cut that shit out." And he gets a little annoyed. Suddenly she realizes that Julian is filled with some dark, ancient, timeless embodiment of fear itself. And Jenny's mind suddenly yeets back into time when her ancestors were hauling water off in deerskin jugs and jaguars prowled the jungles, and she thinks that he's quite possibly the meaning of darkness itself. That's giving him a lot of credit. Just because he wears a sleeveless black vest does not make him the embodiment of darkness itself. Jenny tells him about how she's an independent bad bitch who won't stand for this, and Julian says, "Nor, you've fallen into my trap. Because I set this trap, because I've been watching you since you were a child, because I thought you were a pretty little girl, because when I saw you, I remembered the story of Hades and Persephone, and I decided to pursue you through your entire life, because I have fallen in love with you." Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that. When I read that, maybe my initial assumptions of Julian were wrong, and maybe he isn't as sexy and forgivable as I originally thought. Also, this is the 3rd time he's been described as exotic, and we're only on page 67. God help me. Julian offers Jenny riches, and he tells her he'll give her anything she wants, and be anything she wants, and give her pets, and take her to faraway places. Actually, maybe I'm warming back up to him. No, I can't do this. Jenny is just as bad as me though, because when he says all this to her, she hesitates. And he's like, "Yeah, babe, just yield to me now while I'm still your friend, because I might not be so gentle later." Okay, he's lost me again. He has lost me again. This is a roller coaster and I'm getting whiplash. Also, way to lay it on thick and show all of your trump cards at the beginning, sir. She hasn't even started playing the game yet, and he's promising her all this stuff and confessing his undying love to her right out the gate. What if she agreed to be his wife at that instant? Would he just stop the game? Man spent years fabricating a false reality to entrap a girl he likes, but hasn't even said more than 10 sentences to her. Jenny is back on her "I hate you" hype train, but Julian says he never loses, which definitely means that statement will come back to bite him towards the end. Jenny is fucking fuming. She stands up to him and she's like, "I'll never back down. I'll never give in." He's had quite enough of her standing up for herself. And so he's like, "Fine, we're starting the game. Here's a creepy riddle. I am just 2 and 2. I am hot. I am cold. I'm the parents of numbers that cannot be told. I'm a gift beyond measure, a matter of course, and I'm yielded with pleasure when taken by force." We're not even gonna begin to get into that. I just can't. Julian says, "Give me the answer to this riddle and I'll let one of your besties go for free, as a kindness to you. Here's a hint. It's something that I want from you." Oh, and before he leaves, he says, "By the way, Jenny, if you die in the game, you die in real life. One of your friends will definitely not make it out of here. LMAO, bye." He leaves and the clock strikes 10. They've been talking for an hour. Now, Ginny officially has 8.5 hours to fight her way through the house and into the real world. Thank God they all ate a really good dinner before this, and I hope none of them need to use the bathroom. Now that she's fully alone, Ginny takes a moment to panic and then unpanic herself by thinking of her friends and Tom. And then she decides to begin playing the game. After walking for some time on the first floor, Ginny meets up with Dee, who's in the middle of wrestling a door shut in order to hold in some giant creature that's attempting to escape. Ginny helps her out, and then they see a door appear. It leads to a bedroom that looks exactly like Dee's bedroom, but it's not, because this is the Shadow Realm. The first description of Dee's room is that, quote, an African mask hung down in primitive glory, end quote. Just why? Why, LJ Smith? She also says Dee has clay sculptures and a fucking bust of Nefertiti in her room. You can tell LJ really pat herself on the back for this. Why can't Dee just have a normal bedroom instead of having an African museum to prove how African she is? In any other context, it would be cool until you realize all of this surface level representational stuff is just being shoved into the only black character in the series. It hurts. Ginny and Dee are trapped in Dee's lookalike bedroom until Dee faces her nightmare, aka the nightmares they all had to draw before the game started. And for Dee, her nightmare ends up being aliens. What? Oh, really? As in an alien abduction. Ginny and Dee get abducted by aliens and put on probing tables. Basically, the reason Dee is so terrified of aliens is because she mostly relies on her athletics and she hates technology because it makes her feel stupid. So alien technology having the power to trap you and render your body useless is her number one fear. Ginny and Dee are laying on these probing tables and they're being held down by this like gravitational field above them. One of the aliens comes in and it's pure white with blue eyes, and Ginny is like, hold on. That alien over there is a bit familiar. Like, why he kind of hot though? Then another alien picks up a giant ass needle and threatens to stab Dee in the stomach with it. Okay, gore moments. So they realize that these gravitational force fields above them are tied to these fluorescent lights, and the lights generate an invisible force field to keep them from moving. But when one of them struggles enough, the force field has to double down on its pressure, which means the force field on the other person on the other table is diminished. Does that make sense? They use this information to wriggle out of the situation. Dee rocks back and forth until Ginny could free herself, and then Ginny makes a distraction. Then they both book it out of there. Apparently this is enough to conquer Dee's fear. So now a door is revealed to them and they use it to escape the alien probing room, and they fall back into the main hallway of the house. To signify the end of the trial, the piece of paper with Dee's drawing of her nightmare on it materializes. Ginny and Dee celebrate before hearing the clock strike 11, an hour down. Ginny and Dee make their way along the first floor together. They find that the magical house has changing doors and shifting hallways. The usual, a real nightmare for home renovation teams. Suddenly, Ginny turns around to find that Dee's gone. What? But Julian has appeared out of nowhere. What? He's trying to get her feedback on the game so far. He's like, 5 stars? 5 stars? Sir, she has only passed 1 level so far. I do love when he shows up though, because the book gives him a new grungy outfit every single time. Why would something as archaic as darkness and death and fear decide to cloak itself as a 17-year-old boy with ripped jeans and a Bieber cut? I don't understand. Jenny's like, first of all, I know you were that one alien in the room. Just wanted to start by saying that. That was very strange. Julian starts up some pseudo-romantic-ish and tells Ginny about her emerald eyes and how he can read her every emotion because that's how long he's studied her. He's like, can I just touch you for a second? And then Jenny's like, yeah, wait, no, what? And then he breaches physical boundaries and reaches up to pull her hair out of the ponytail she's been wearing. Remember, my girl Ginny put the ponytail in because boyfriend Tom likes it in a ponytail. So for Julian to disrupt her neat and tidy appearance, that's wild. Jenny's like, gross, ew, nar. But then she's like, oop, pause for a second. His hand in my hair is kind of nice and sweet and gentle. And Julian's like, there's something that you want from life, Ginny, but you're not getting it. Do you want me to show it to you right now? And Jenny's like, I have to leave. I have to go. But she doesn't. You guys, she doesn't leave because she secretly doesn't want to leave. Julian senses her hesitation immediately. So he tries to seduce her even more by leaning in and doing that thing that most romances do when the two of them don't really kiss, but they're like 4 millimeters apart and their lips are hovering over each other and they're just exhaling into each other's faces. Yeah, he does that. I feel like this is all happening too fast. We are in hour 2 of an 8-hour journey. Like, shouldn't he be reserving this kind of temptation until Jenny's like halfway through the game? Because if she's just finished level 1 and you're over here hovering over her lips. Like, what the heck is this gonna build to by the time she's towards the top of the mansion? This is a PG book, unless you're gonna keep leading her on for the next 7.5 hours, in which case, I'm so sorry, Ginny. Stay strong. I just want to read this line. He was evil, cruel, capricious, and dangerous as a cobra, a prince of darkness, completely evil and completely in love with her. Also, of all the things for a timeless demon of darkness to do, he decides to pursue a teenage girl with the most boring life. Like, why? When he could conceivably have anybody on Earth. When there's a perfectly sexy adult sitting right here recording a YouTube video who would be down for anything. Anyway, he's about to kiss her and she's like, starp it. And he's like, okay. And he stops. We love a good listener. It's the bare minimum, but I have to give it to him. He is polite. No, why am I defending him? The feminism leaving my body when I see a magical white-haired goth twink who likes to kidnap innocent victims in the name of infatuation. Ginny asked Julian that if he's so obsessed, why didn't he just kidnap her and force her to stay with him forever without going to the lengths of creating an entire board game? And he's like, so Ginny starts thinking, and she realizes Mr. Julian Shadow Man actually needs Ginny to consent in order for him to do anything to her or with her. She's like, come to think of it, you had to ask to touch my hair, and I told you you couldn't kiss me, so you didn't kiss me, you were forced to stop. That's right, people. Canonically, Julian is bound by the laws of consent. If Ginny doesn't verbally consent to something, he has no physical power to do anything. It's the reason he needed to influence Ginny to buy the board game in the first place. It's the reason all of her friends had to recite an oath before the game started. My man's is all about consent. Now Ginny is thrilled that she has power over him, and all she has to do is say no to him. At the end of the scene, Julian leaves with some ominous threats to her friends' lives. You guys, the scenes between them are so long and drawn out, like even longer than the one that she just had with Dee. And in that scene, they were abducted by aliens. The conversations between her and Julian just last forever, and they're saying the same crap over and over. Am I still kind of obsessed? Though, maybe I am. Anyway, Jenny and Dee find each other again, and they keep walking down the hallway, and conveniently they run into Audrey. As soon as the three of them are linked up, a magical door opens in the hallway, and it leads to a dark forest at night with a silvery moon. Audrey reveals that her nightmare was an image of her opening a shopping catalog and finding it blank, because as a rich girl, shopping is her therapy. So she tells Ginny and Dee that this whole forest thing ain't right. The girls suspect that even if you drew one thing as your nightmare, maybe the game has the power to read your mind and give you your actual nightmare regardless of what was on your paper. They're walking along when Audrey realizes this is the Black Forest in Germany, which is apparently the forest that inspired the Grimm fairy tales. It's revealed that her parents travel a lot for work, so she's Mrs. Worldwide. We learn that she can speak a lot of different languages, and she's been to lots of countries, so she's a bit of a melting pot of a person. Ginny realizes that Julian is using all of their own minds and memories to make up the realm that they're in, because the hallways of the mansion reminded her of the haunted mansion from Disneyland that freaked her out as a kid. So Audrey's like, you know what, my childhood was full of scary fairy tales. I'm just not sure which one scared me the most. So they're all uneasy as to what they might find. They come across a clearing where a bunch of young men in leather tunics and fur-lined coats are gathered around having a little shindig. And Audrey is immediately like, phew, some of these unwashed men are looking a little tasty. And she steps out to introduce herself to them because she can speak German. Audrey, girl, you are committed. Ginny and Dee follow her, and all the girls end up having a little soiree with these strangers. They're invited to sit at the guys' campfire and drink from their horns, and none of them really know what these guys are saying. Audrey admits that even she can only understand half of it because their German is like outdated German. I'm sure you can all see where this is going. Turns out these German guys are celebrating the coming of spring, and they're asking the dark elves to bring a fruit yield, and the girls are going to be offered as sacrifices. The guys push the girls into an underground cave. Inside the cave, the girls come face to face with a cult of strange dark elf men that have half human, half animal bodies. These elves lead them through winding tunnels. Audrey explains that they must be delivering the girls directly to the Earl King, who is like the CEO of evil spirits, who takes to young girls and children? Did I read that right? Of course, Ginny is quickly separated from Dee and Audrey for some reason. I wonder why. Do you think perhaps the Earl King is going to end up being Julian? And this will be yet another chapter-long session of will they, won't they? Ginny's put into this elven jail that's really just a big room, and she has time to think about the riddle Julian gave her. She's like, the answer is a kiss. Think about it. I am just 2 and 2. I am hot. I am cold. 2 and 2 equals 2 lips on 2 lips, and kisses can be passionate or impersonal. I mean, at least that's how Jenny justifies it. Also, she mentions that baby making usually starts with a kiss, which, whoa, that's pretty spicy thinking for a PGYA novel. But Jenny's like, that last line is a little problematic. Like, it is not given with pleasure when taken by force, not on my watch. Of course, as soon as Jenny arrives to all of these conclusions, on cue, Julian, as the freaking Earl King, walks through the door. Is anyone surprised? We have a new outfit for Julian. Yet again, this man is everywhere. He needs new hobbies. I think he's just doing too much. Get a job, stay away from her. Also, him being the Earl King checks out because, after all, from what we've learned about him, he does seem to like children, with the whole falling in love with Jenny when she was a toddler. My girl Jenny is once again flip-flopping harder than a 2004 Motorola Razr. As soon as she sees Julian and the White Witch of Narnia leather and fur fit, she instantly is like, well, Tom never dresses like that. Julian starts asking Jenny to submit to him. Gross. And she's still in her sass parade, giving him an earful. She tells him that she knows the answer to the riddle now, and he has to free one of her friends now. But he's like, you need to give me the answer, as in give me a kiss, please. Ooh. Jenny's like, nor. And he's like, I'll wait. He produces a white rose for her, and instantly she's like, well, I mean, he's giving me a rose. You guys, like, how am I supposed to say no to that? And so she accepts it. So much for standing your ground, Jenny. She's caressing the rose and touching it to her cheek. Like, girls' morals are out the door. Then again, if Julian had whipped up a grande iced vanilla latte with oat milk and offered that to me, I don't think I would be strong enough to resist either. Jenny's still holding out for a hero, so Julian accepts that she won't kiss him. Instead, he suggests that they go on a romantic moonlit walk in the garden of his elven kingdom. Jenny reluctantly agrees. While they're walking, he starts asking her stuff like, why do you think you've never been bitten by an animal? Like, why do you think bad things never happen to you and you never run into misfortune? Like, you never scraped your knee ever in your life. Well, that's because of me, because I've been watching over you your entire life and I've been protecting you. What can I say? I'm such a gentleman. Now give Jenny a receipt, because she's buying into all of this and she's instantly swooning. Girl is as uncommitted to her own feelings as I am to my workout routine. After laying it on thick, Julian holds her hand and tells her that she's his first love and the only one he's ever loved and ever will love. That's a Clifford-sized red flag. Then suddenly, he's holding her hand and caressing her cheek, and Jenny's like, wait, I thought he couldn't do anything without my consent, and I ain't said nothing about this cheek caressing, hand holding business. She puts 2 and 2 together and she's like, wait a fucking second. You gave me that white rose so it could allow you to touch whatever I allowed it to touch of me. Does that sentence make any sense? Basically, it was a magical rose, and because Jenny had held it and put it to her cheek, it's like a magical consent, and that gives Julian a loophole for which to touch her. Apparently this is also permanent consent, as in Julian has now unlocked unrestricted access to Jenny's hair, her hand, and her cheek, and there are no takesies backsies. Jenny's furious. She's like, you keep tricking me. And he's like, yeah, bitch, so what? You keep getting tricked. I could excuse the grooming and the stalking and the kidnapping, but the dubious consent stuff is the final straw. Once again, I am joking. Obviously, everything I just listed is inexcusable. This is fiction. Suddenly, Jenny hears bestie Audrey screaming, and Julian's like, oh, you better go check that out. And so Jenny just goes running. Further down in the cave, Audrey and Dee are suddenly fighting zombies. Dee freaking snaps a zombie's neck with one kick, and all the girls book it out of the cave and find themselves back inside the mansion hallway. Also, a clock strikes 12. Now, when's the time for a snack break? I would be summoning Julian and asking for like a 15-minute timeout so we can all order something. Imagine an Uber Eats driver casually warping into the hellscape to give you a Big Mac and an Oreo McFlurry, and then they walk away as if this is just another day for them. Also, I feel so bad for Jenny's other friends who have now spent 2 whole hours fighting their nightmares somewhere inside the house. Meanwhile, Jenny, Audrey, and Dee are having a kiki in the corridor, laughing about how wild and crazy everything is. Once they're safe, Jenny notices that Audrey and Dee share a little look, and it seems like they're now not enemies anymore. I believe in the Audrey XD frenemies to lovers pipeline, and you can't change my mind. As they're sitting in the hallway, celebrating the fact that they're still alive and not like zombified, a piece of paper falls from the sky and it's Audrey's nightmare drawing. Turns out she did draw a forest, and she just lied about it. Why? For what? The 3 of them are having a casual chat about the horrors of the night, And Audrey thinks that they must be in some sort of shadowy ice world from Norse mythology called Niflheim. And Jenny's like, you know what? Earlier in the parlor, I did pull back a curtain to one of the windows and I saw nothing but blizzards and giant monsters. That also checks out for Julian, since he's like an icy, shadowy prince. Audrey mentions that she saw something once about how this world could be sealed up and bound by a specific rune, but she can't remember which one. This book is going on for forever, and I blame it on Jenny having 5 whole friends. Like, could we not have stuck to an original YA fiction trio moment? There had to be 6 of these people? And let's be real here, the actual nightmares in each room would probably take 5 seconds to overcome if it weren't for Julian showing up and distracting Jenny for 45 minutes. The 3 girls walk along the hallway for a while and find Michael down the hall, and he's just standing in front of a locked door. Actually, it looks like all of Jenny's friends aren't actually fighting their nightmares, because every time she gets to a new friend, the door that leads to that friend's nightmare can only be unlocked once Jenny turns the knob. So actually, maybe the last friend to be saved is ironically luckier, since they can skip all the trials and tribulation. I mean, think about it, Dee was the first person to be saved. So now she and Jenny have to go through everyone else's freaking nightmares. But Michael hasn't had to go through Audrey's nightmare or Dee's nightmare. Jenny opens the door, but not before Michael says, quote, "I'm a registered coward," end quote. But it turns out to be a Silent Hill PT moment. Every time they open the door, they're led to an identical hallway and nothing changes. So naturally they all give up and sit down on the floor. Jenny laments about her hot otherworldly captor and how he wants to give her everything she's ever wanted, but she just doesn't know what he sees in her. Audrey, Dee, and Michael tell her that she's super sweet and perfect and good and amazing and cute and humble and honest. Like, everyone's kind of in love with Jenny and it's so obvious. And Jenny's like, "I'm a prep and he's a goth. It would never work out." Dee thinks Julian is an alien. Audrey thinks he's a dark fae. Michael thinks he's a demon. So while they're debating all this, they start turning into trees. All of their bodies start growing green spots and branches. Okay, gore warning for the next 15 seconds. Dee tries to rip some branches off of Michael, but it starts ripping his skin off with it. Let me just take a second to not imagine that in my mind's eye. Okay. Michael's freaking out. He's screaming at the top of his lungs because he doesn't want to become a tree of all the nightmares to have. Everyone else is starting to grow moss and shrubs, but they're proportionately more chill with it than he is. But he gets the brilliant idea to grab a candle from the wall sconce and try to burn the branches off of him. So Dee helps him, and they do burn the roots off of his body. Pretty soon, they all use the fire to get rid of their weird growths. That seems suspiciously quick and easy. But no, that's it. Literally, they go through the door and it spits them into the same hallway. But this time, a paper's on the floor with Michael's nightmare drawn on it. And it was a drawing of him turning into a plant. Like, that was his nightmare. And all the girls are treating him like a puppy. They say stuff like, "You were so brave, BB. We're so proud of you for conquering your plant fear." Meanwhile, Dee is probably over there like, "I nearly got my stomach gored out by aliens and I fucking drop kicked a zombie. Where is my praise?" Now it's 1 o'clock apparently. How? There is no way burning a few branches off of themselves took 1 full hour. The 4 of them turn to see a staircase, which means that they are officially leaving the first floor of the house and moving on to the second. So now only Zach, Tom, and Summer are left, but we know that boyfriend Tom is off limits and probably won't be on the second floor anyway. So really Zach and Summer are left, which means their nightmares have to find a way to take up significant time because Jenny still has a whole 5.5 hours left until dawn, but only 3 friends left to save. If each rescue takes an hour, she's still gonna have like 2 whole hours to spare. But it would never be that easy. You know, some nefarious shit is about to go down that will eat up more time than expected. The second floor has a hall full of mirrors, like those in the funhouse mirror maze you'd find at carnivals. The gang finds Summer huddled in a corner behind the mirror maze. Next to her is a door, so Jenny asks Summer what her nightmare is. Summer says it's a messy room, and everyone immediately ridicules her for being boring. Like, yes, Summer, way to have a boring nightmare. Look, nothing can be as lame as Michael turning into an IKEA houseplant. They open the door to find a messy room. Summer's messy bedroom. Everyone just kind of assumes the objective is to Marie Kondo this bitch and organize everything they possibly can. So everyone starts getting to work. We don't know much about Summer's character other than that she's tiny, blonde, sweet, and apparently her family are a bunch of hippies. Soon enough, the nightmare starts to get worse. Like, the trash piled up in Summer's room is pretty tame on the top, but as they start cleaning and getting further and further into the garbage, Jenny finds a flattened rat carcass, and Dee picks up a bucket of maggots. These are Resident Evil levels of what the hell is in this corner and why is it breathing? And then Summer tells them a little more details about her dream. It's not just a messy room she's scared of. She also is scared of sneaker-sized cockroaches and living fungi. And I admit this is when I started getting chills because LJ did not have to describe things as well as she did in this scene. It really is Bug's life in that room at this point. Cockroaches, beetles, moths, crickets. Summer's so scared she's practically T-posing in the middle of the room, reverting back to her default settings, while her friends are begging her to help them clear the trash because through the mess, they can see that the corner of an exit door is peeking out. Once they clear the door, everyone just makes a break for it and jumps through. At this point, Summer gets separated from the others who have successfully escaped. So everyone realizes that she's still in the room. So they turn and try to scream at her to GTFO, but she's too scared to take a single step towards them. At this point, there are cracks in the floor and the ceiling is breaking and fungi and anemones and mold are spreading through the room. And Summer just starts screaming bloody murder, but she still can't move. Suddenly, as they're watching this through the doorway, the room collapses around her and everyone is forced to watch her die. Well, not really, because this is still like a PG book. So it just says that the debris blocks the exit door and they hear the room collapse in on itself and it's assumed that Summer dies. And then the door disappears. R.I.P. Summer Pearson Parker. Ginny is going ballistic, trying to beat her fist on the wall where the door used to be. And everyone is just trying to calm her down, but Ginny's like screeching and she's like, why? Not her of all people, no. I'm not that attached to Summer as a character. I didn't really feel that bad. Eventually they all calm down and just kind of sit there shocked that one of their friends has just gotten Roblox oofed in front of their eyes. And to make matters worse, a clock strikes 2 a.m. Dee, Audrey, and Michael go off to find Zach, who they probably figure is around there somewhere. Meanwhile, Jenny is crumpled on the floor, mentally beating herself up over Summer's death. Suddenly, Jenny's having hallucinations that she's seeing flashes of light reflected in the mirror maze, and it reminds her of a camera flash, and cousin Zach is a photographer. So she's trying to run around figuring out where this flash is coming from. She finds an open door and just jumps into it because she's learned 0 lessons in this nightmare world. So I'm writing this script as I read the book, and some memories have just popped up. And if I am correct, I think this next scene is messed up in so many different ways. Jenny looks around and finds herself in her cousin Zach's garage, which is full of giant images of his photography. She mentions that there's this image of their school cafeteria where the cafeteria tables have been stacked up on top of each other because apparently it was one big class prank and it was also the first time that they all really became besties. And so Zach likes to keep that photograph in his garage as like a reminder. So Jenny's pretty familiar with this garage since her and Zach have been playmates since they were kids, so she's in there all the time. And apparently Zach has like rigged this whole thing up to be a dark room for him. Jenny sees Zach in the corner mixing up chemicals so he can develop a photograph. So she runs over to him and tries to tell him that he's trapped inside this nightmare, but he's completely spaced out. Zach explains to her that all these photographs were laid out for him when he got there, and he's just kind of been robotically developing them for no reason, and he doesn't know what's on them. So Jenny's basically trying to snap him out of his trance, but he's not budging. So she just hugs him, and then it kind of works. He stops what he's doing, and then Jenny's like, remember when we were kids and we used to play cops and robbers and we used to live next door to each other? It was so fun. And so then he's like starting to snap out of it, and he's like, yeah, that was pretty fun. And she's like, yeah, you remember me, like cousin Jenny. Just trying to get him to be grounded back into reality. Then pretty soon, both of them are talking about how wacky everything is, being in the shadow realm and whatnot. And now he's hugging her back, and it's kind of sweet. And then Jenny's like, that's weird. This is a pretty intimate embrace, but it's chill. Then he kisses the back of her neck, and Jenny's like, you know, this is just what cousins do. Am I right? So she convinces herself that Zach is just being nice and sweet, and that him gently stroking her hair is fine. Then he kisses her neck again, and Jenny's like, you know, once is harmless, twice is a little strange, but the really disturbing thing is I'm enjoying it a bit. Jenny, no. So then he does it a third time, and Jenny's like, okay, all right, I'm starting to feel some sensations, but like, this ain't right. Zach, we're like a little tired. Maybe we're both like a little out of ourselves right now. And Zach's like, no, definitely. Like, you're so right. Like, we're crazy. Like, we're being crazy right now. But I am going to kiss your hair, though. So this sends some more warning signals through Jenny. But the girl is increasingly getting into it. Like, she's not pulling away. She verbally says, Zachary, this is wrong. We're cousins. What is happening? But then Zach is like, we're just half cousins. What the fuck? And Jenny's like, you got me there. You got me there. That's a good and valid point. Our mothers are only half sisters. This does not change anything. So Zach just keeps rapidly kissing her everywhere. Then the only final excuse Jenny makes is that she's with Tom. Like, that's the only last resort she can think of in the moment, as her hot cousin is making major moves on her. In turn, Zach just says that Tom doesn't deserve her and he doesn't love her enough, and that Tom and Jenny were never meant to be together. And Jenny's like, you got me there. Once again, that's a good and valid point. So now Zach has her so tightly clutched to him that she can't get away. But also, she openly admits she doesn't want to get away. And she wants this. Jenny. She's looking into his wintry gray eyes and she willingly leans in and kisses him. I need to repeat that. Jenny leans in to kiss cousin Zach. Okay, that's it. I just needed everyone to hear that twice over. Oh my gosh, as soon as their lips touch, Jenny's apparently melting and flying and drowning all at once. She's loving it. Damn, Jenny, what was Tom doing for you to have never experienced a good kiss before? Because in this moment, she's acting as if this is the most bomb-ass kiss she's ever had in her life. I think there's even a line that's like, she's never kissed Tom back this hard before. Like, even she recognizes that she's like, no, I've never been into this. I've never even been into this as much as I've ever been with Tom. What? Huh? I'm losing coherency. So now the two of them are just in this garage making out as a family bonding exercise. Jenny's hands are in Zach's hair and she's like, so soft. It's a little shorter than I remember. Like, his ponytail's gone, but that's weird. Okay. But then it clicks. So she jumps back and it's Julian. It's Julian. He's been cosplaying as Zach this whole time. There's a line where Jenny thinks that Julian in Zach's clothes makes him even more beautiful. So beautiful that it's frightening. And I'm like, Jenny, at this point, how long have you just wanted your cousin? Somehow in this moment, Jenny is more horrified that she's just kissed Julian than if she had just kissed Zach. And she's trying to decipher Matrix Inception levels of thought processes in her mind. She's like, did I know it was Julian before I kissed him? Or did I know during me kissing him? Or did I know right before I pulled away? Or did I know the entire time? Or did I not know at all? She is shocked to the point of speechlessness. Like, same girl, same, but not for that reason. And she tells Julian, like, but you acted just like him perfectly. How did you know all of those things that he knew? All of those memories? And Julian's like, yeah, I've watched him and I've watched you. Duh. I would say bi icon, but he's not iconic. He's demonic. And then Jenny says, Julian, actually, yeah, I've been meaning to ask you, just have some notes here. Why did you kill Summer? Like, why would you kill my bestie? Julian is instantly defensive and he tells her that Summer died on her own. She did it by herself. She did it by herself to herself. He also says he warned Jenny at the beginning of all this that one of them wouldn't make it. Okay, we all know the story by now. Jenny says, I hate you. Julian says, I love you. He keeps threatening her, but clearly he's not going to hurt her because the man has confessed to saving her from stepping on a Lego and stubbing her toe against the coffee table for her entire life. He's not going to suddenly switch off console her now that he's gotten her where he wants her. So all of these are just empty threats. Also, we get the fourth time that Julian's eyes are described as exotic. So then he gets pissy with her because she's getting pissy with him. So he swarms Jenny with bees. Real classy, Julian. That is real classy of you. Jenny passes out from bee phobia or something. And when she wakes up, she's still in the garage and a clock strikes 3. She's wasted an entire hour kissing her cousin. I know it wasn't really him. It just feels horrible. So when Jenny wakes up in the garage, this time she is determined to find the real Zach. Do you think it's because she wants to finish I can't finish the sentence. I don't even know how I would finish that sentence. So she finds a door in the garage and opens it to an infinite space of stars and black velvety cosmoses that's lined with these photography studio lamps. She sees Zach, the real Zach this time, in the distance under one of these lights, and so she like tiptoes over to him because she's still scared that it's gonna be Julian again. Real Zach is in the middle of making some art piece by putting a rock on a gray canvas and calling it rock on water. As an artist, that does sound scarily accurate to something we would do. Jenny tries to talk to him, but he's dissociating like crazy, so he's still back in his regular Zach mode. He tells Jenny that he thinks he's having a psychotic break because he says it runs in their family. And Jenny's like, what? He's just been convinced that everything he's been seeing is a hallucination. Then suddenly someone in the darkness is shooting futuristic crossbow bolts at both of them. And Zach's like, oh, that's just my clone who's been hunting me. And Jenny's like, oh, for goodness sakes, Zach, everything is real. Summer's dead. You will actually die if you get shot with this crossbow. Also, your art concept kind of sucks. So this is enough to wake Zach out of his dazed mental state. And then Jenny grabs him and both of them run as they're continually being shot at. After a couple minutes, the crossbow person catches up to them and Jenny sees that it's a cyberpunk dude with a futuristic helmet. I bet you $5 it's probably Julian, because who else would it be? Jenny randomly decides that in order for Zach to confront his nightmare, he probably just needs to pull the helmet off of this cyberpunk hunk. Meanwhile, the cyber hunter, as the book calls him, just kind of stands there waiting for Zach to do something. Zach walks up to the guy, pulls the helmet off of him, and there's nothing underneath. Nothing. Jenny screams as this guy's entire body crumples into air. And then conveniently, an exit door opens behind them. So that was really the entirety of Zach's nightmare. He just had to take somebody's helmet off. Whatever, it's still better than Michael's. But I know the kids in this book got more deep-seated issues than this. Jenny and Zach make it through the door and land in the second floor hallway again. Zach is more present now. He's not astral projecting anymore. So he's like, oh yeah, I'm here. Wow. And you're real. You're not like a part of my hallucination. Okay, cool. Let's survive. Jenny's still trying to figure out why he thinks psychosis runs in their family, because it's the first she's ever heard of it, but Zach won't really tell her. And just then they both hear a clock strike 4 a.m. Now that the adrenaline has died down, Jenny is blushing because she's like, remember back in the dark room when his gray eyes were flecked with passion towards me, but it wasn't him, it was Julian. But like he still had the face of Zach. Like looking back on that, that was some good shit. Curse Julian for making me believe that my cousin ever wanted me romantically. Yes, Jenny, that's the real issue here, is that Julian led you on when in reality, you know Zach won't ever be into you. Is that really what you're focusing on here? Jenny, I'm begging you to branch outside of your current social bubble, because if your options are so limited that your half-cousin looks like the best meal on the table right now, there's an easy fix to all of this, and that's to have Jenny be alone. I ship Jenny with peace and quiet. She and Zach agree to split up in order to find the others. Turns out Zach kept some of the crayons from earlier in the night, so Jenny gets a blue crayon to mark her path and Zach gets a red one. They both go opposite ways down the hallway of mirrors. Jenny actually gets salty with him for not thanking her and not giving her a farewell. And so she thinks to herself, well, he's not that romantic after all, I guess. Jenny, if you don't stop! The fact that my last video also had to address, I'm gonna have to distance myself from this topic. Jenny comes to a blank wall at the end of the hallway. Laying in front of the wall is her blank paper with her undrawn nightmare on it. Oh shit! Julian materializes behind her, and he's wearing the black body armor of the cyberpunk hunter from Zach's nightmare. Say what you want about him, but man knows how to enter a scene. He loves a little role play. You have to applaud his dedication and his wardrobe changes. He talks to Jenny some more about his casual hobby of stalking her throughout her entire life. Jenny starts looking back at her memories like, now that you mention it, I did wonder why my sleep paralysis monster always took the form of a slender twink in the corner of my room. Like, that's such a coincidence. Imagine if Julian was like, nah, that wasn't me, that was my uncle, the Babadook. Julian's teasing her about how she has to face her worst nightmare, but he knows that she suppressed it to the point where she doesn't know what it is. So then Jenny has the smart idea to just use her blue crayon to draw on the slip of paper to reconstruct her nightmare. So the only thing she remembers from her recurring nightmares is that everything starts with a door to her grandfather's basement. So that's what she draws on the piece of paper. Accordingly, the wall in front of her shifts and a door is revealed. So she walks over the threshold and down the stairs into her grandpa's basement. The only thing she remembers from her worst nightmare is that it happened when she was 5 years old and she was looking for her grandfather one day, and that's why she ended up there. So Jenny's walking through a perfect replica of that basement as if it's the memory playing out in front of her. She looks around and she sees that her grandfather has a strange collection of occult materials, like Indiana Jones level of artifacts down there collecting dust. Egyptian ankhs, evil eye charms, wooden instruments. So she realizes that they're all protective items. But what would he need protecting from? She looks around some more and her grandpa has scrolls full of ancient language alphabets. And then she looks down at his desk to see that he has a huge book of runes. Wait a minute, didn't Julian say something about runes when they first landed in the house? And didn't Audrey say something about runes when they were talking about the shadow world? Yeah, it turns out her grandpa has written a list of runes, their names and their functions. And one of them the rune for containment is underlined. Now, why in the world would Julian let her see this? You can't just introduce a rune of containment and not use it later on in the book. Like, why would he let her enter her nightmare if he knows that it contains the materials to defeat him? Maybe he's just that confident that she'll never use it on him, or that she's not smart enough. I don't know. Upon seeing all of this in the basement, Ginny comes to the hilarious conclusion that her grandfather used to be a sorcerer. Which, okay. Or he could just have a really cool ass hyperfixation. Like a scene out of a horror game, Ginny just conveniently finds a meticulously organized journal where she can piece together her grandfather's findings. So he's writing down things about trying to contain a spirit, and he's like putting poems in his journal that mention the game that they're playing. And Ginny's like, oh, he must have gotten into all of this occult stuff from his World War II prison mates when he was locked in a German POW camp. Remember when this book was just about a magical board game? Ginny turns to see a bookcase that's been shifted and there's a door behind it. And she's like, now I remember I opened that door when I was 5. It's all coming back. So now she has to reenact the memory. So she grabs the doorknob and opens it once again. Instantly, all she can see is ice and shadows, and it nearly freezes her and blinds her all at once. And she can see a pair of dark eyes looking deep into her soul. They're the same eyes that she sometimes saw before going to sleep, the same eyes she's seen before waking up, the eyes that she had seen during the game. It's Julian, or at least the version of him that existed when she was 5. And it's revealed that he's a part of this group of eldritch creatures that her grandfather kept locked in his basement for funsies. Ginny's standing there staring into the abyss, and the eyes start to like rush at her, but suddenly her grandfather's there, or at least the memory of her grandfather's there. And he pushes her aside, shuts the door, and tries to recite the rune of containment, but it won't work. They hear voices from the entities in the closet, and the voices are saying that because Ginny let them free, they now have some supernatural claim on her, and they would like to eat her. Or at least most of them say they want to eat her, but there's one voice that sticks out to Ginny that just says he wants to keep her and not eat her. Remember, this actually happened when Ginny was 5, so of course, in the memory, her grandfather's like, I'm not giving up my tiny grandchild to a host of shadow beings. So Grampy and the demons strike up a deal, and he sacrifices himself in Ginny's place. So the entity agrees, except for the one voice. The one voice is like, I kind of still want Ginny, you know. Nevertheless, the other entities accept the sacrifice. So these icy, shadowy tendrils yoink him into the room, and Ginny tries to grab onto him, but he hits her and scratches her hands until she lets go of him. And then the door slams behind them, and her grandpa is gone, and the door is resealed. So I guess I can see why she repressed that. Ginny passes out yet again, and when she wakes up, her friends are surrounding her, concerned. Turns out they had followed her crayon trail and found her there in the basement, laying in an icy puddle, all scratched up and bloody, from her grandpa. Zach is the most concerned, and he figures that Ginny has just gone through something with her grandfather. When Ginny confirms this, he's like, well, yeah, my parents say that your grandfather went insane and attacked you as a child. And the way that you're laying here on the floor now, covered in scratches, is just like how he found you when you were 5 years old. So apparently this is the reason Zach's parents convinced him that mental illness runs in their family. Because for years, Ginny and Zach's family thought that Ginny's grandfather had hurt her in some way before he disappeared forever. And Ginny's like, no, he saved me. So she explains everything about the shadow creatures and how her grandfather had played with dark magic for the sake of power and knowledge, and he ended up having to sacrifice himself for her. But now that just brings up more questions. Like, if the entities were satisfied by the grandpa's sacrifice and the door resealed, then how the heck did Julian manage to get out into her world? Did he muster up all of his ancient simp energy until it coalesced into the physical body of a teenage boy? I don't know. Her besties all hug her, and her friends are all encouraging her, and it's very sweet. In the distance, a clock strikes 5 a.m. Now, I just want to know, what the hell are the other 2 books in the anthology for? Because we're almost done with the first book, and Ginny and her friends are on a trajectory to win the game and Fortnite dance their way out of that portal. So then how come this series has 2 whole books left? Ginny and her friends find a staircase with a door, and they know it leads up to the top of the house, the final room where they can end things once and for all. They still have a little over an hour to win. Ginny turns the knob, and they find themselves in the original games shop where Ginny first met Julian. But this time there's a giant grandfather clock in a corner, and long-forgotten boyfriend Tom is bound and chained to it. Tom's face is completely sunken and he has no physical wounds, but somehow he has massive dark circles under his eyes and he just looks tired. What has Julian been doing to him for the past 8.5 hours? Boy is exhausted. Ginny runs over and Tom reveals that Julian hasn't really done anything to him besides forcing him to hallucinate rats. But also he says that Julian walks up to him and holds up a mirror and forces Tom to watch all of the things that Ginny and her friends have been forced to go through. Instantly, Ginny's like, well, hope Tom didn't see any hand holding or cheek caressing or cousin kissing. So she casually asks him if he's seen anything, you know, weird or like seen anything that Ginny's done that he doesn't agree with. But then he says Julian never showed him anything besides their nightmares. So Tom's mostly concerned about the, you know, important things like Summer's untimely death. So Ginny's like, phew. Tom points out that the main door to the shop is slightly open, and that's where the portal to their world is. But instead of a city street outside, the crew catches a glimpse of a giant werewolf and giant snake guarding the portal. People, let's give it up for the creeper and the lurker! Just then, Julian pops into the game shop with the rest of them, and when they confront him, he does the #1 villain intimidation tactic, which is like to list out all of his identities in a very neat, concise order. He's the Shadow Man, he's the Visitor, he's a Nightmare, he's a Wraith, he's Loki. Wait, he's Loki? Basically, Julian's a sore loser, and he's like, I'm not gonna let you guys go. In fact, I'm ready to duke it out with you children right here, right now. And my besties, the Creeper and the Lurker, can help me. He wrong for that. He real wrong for that. They won fair and square. And he mentions that he's played this game with other humans before, and no one has ever survived, but clearly he's underestimating the power of a group of 16-year-olds. Case in point, Dee just fucking drop kicks Julian, or at least she tries to. But of course, his otherworldly reflexes catch her, and he freaking throws her across the room. Ginny, who's panicking now, tries to appeal to Julian and tells him that she'll stay with him if he lets the rest of them go. And she makes sure to like make some googly eyes at him so that he'll remember how good that cousin kissing moment was back in the dark room. And Julian's McLovin' it because she's all he's really wanted in the first place. Like, what can I say? He's such a simple guy. So he agrees to let everyone go except for Tom, who he wants to keep chained up in the realm forever so that Tom can be forced to watch himself get cuckolded for millions of years. Okay, Julian is officially on some freak shit. Ginny's like, no, we don't need all that. No. And so she butters him up like a Thanksgiving turkey, and then Julian's drinking it all in, and she convinces him to let everybody go, period. And then she raises some good points, such as, if Julian had simply shown up in Ginny's life in a normal and safe way and asked her to see a movie or grab a coffee and respected her value as a human being, he would have had a solid chance. And Julian's like, oh, maybe I did not workshop this idea long enough. Yeah, you really got me there. So Ginny is like, babe, you don't have to fight or cheat or lie or force your way to consent. But because you have fought and cheated and lied and forced your way so well today, I will give you my consent. And Julian's like, yeah, that checks out. He tells her that the ultimate form of consent is for her to wear a golden ring that he pulls out of thin air. The ring has an inscription on it that says, all I refuse and thee I choose. But choose is spelled so hilariously, it elicited a real life laugh from me when I read that part. I know it's supposed to feel like archaic language, but it's just silly. Julian puts the ring on Ginny and her friends are like, "Nor Ginny!" But she's ignoring them. By the way, I know this is a penultimate moment that's filled with drama, but if I were Ginny's friend sitting there watching this, my bitter single ass would have been like, oh, get a room. You know what? You two, get a room. You know what? Well wishes. A happy hell to you and your demonic lover. And then I jump through the portal and start angrily vague tweeting about her instantly. Like, ugh, can't believe she's married now. Good for her, I guess. Dee and Audrey try to convince Ginny that she's giving up her girl boss, but Ginny's like, you guys, I'm sorry. I love him. I really do. I want to stay here. This is my home. Julian tells her to recite a couple of lines for their marriage ceremony, and once she does, he's like, okay, cool. You're bound to my side for all eternity. LMAO. And then they need to kiss to seal the deal, but even he is looking at her cautiously, slightly suspicious, but also not about to ruin a good moment. So Ginny does just that. She kisses this man, and everyone sits there and watches. Awkward. All of a sudden, Zachary lunges forward, screaming no, but then he hits an invisible force field around Julian. Since when could Julian make force fields? Ginny's kiss has made him go Super Saiyan. Zach jumps back and he's like, Ginny, I can't believe you're so easy. How come you're just gonna give in like that? What? Of all the times to suddenly have a personality, Zach, sweetie, The moment you landed in this house, you were convinced you were going crazy and you gave up until Jenny went and found you. Anyhow, the deed is done. Julian x Jenny is confirmed canonized in-game couple. Despite all of his talk, Julian is acting all shy now, and he asks Jenny if she's for real, but she insists that this is what she wants. So Julian turns and he snaps his fingers, and the creeper and the lurker go off and take a lunch break or something, which means the portal is now open and up for grabs. He tells Jenny's besties that anyone who goes through the portal will be safe, and anyone who doesn't will get stuck in the realm forever. But it's up to them, and he doesn't care what the heck they do at this point. Jenny looks over at the clock and sees that her friends have about half an hour before dawn, but Dee, Audrey, Michael, Zach, and Tom aren't budging. They won't leave without Jenny. So everyone in this room is now just kind of staring at each other. Julian is like, Jenny, your friends won't freaking leave my house, so let's just go somewhere more private, I guess. Jenny recommends the shabby couch in her grandfather's basement. Okay. Now, as a kid, I was ecstatic when Jenny agreed to this because I wanted to live vicariously through Jenny. So as a kid, I was like, yas, Jenny, marry the hot ass shadow demon. Like, why would you go back to your regular life after this? I think this mentality explains a lot about me as a person. Julian and Jenny head to her grandfather's basement and they just kind of sit down next to each other on the couch. And it is so awkward. She looks over at him and he's just staring at her with intense hunger in his eyes. So Jenny starts off by being like, so you're the youngest shadow man. And Julian's like, yeah, and the nicest. And Jenny's like, oh, of course, yeah, of course. I believe that, yeah. What is happening? They're literally just chilling on the couch. And Julian starts to vent about how annoying and confident Tom is. And then he tells Jenny, mustering up the confidence and the courage. And then he tells Jenny to watch out for Zach, because even when Julian was impersonating Zach back in the dark room, some of the things that he was saying to Jenny were actually from Zach's mind. And Julian says, he really does think about you, you know. I want this to stop. I am weary. Jenny reassures him that there's no one else she wants, not even her half cousin. And then they like make out a little bit. Just a little bit. At this point, I think I would have earnestly asked Julian to conjure up a shower because Jenny is a mess. She's sweaty, she's tired and probably hungry. Her clothes are practically ripped and dirty. She pulls away from Julian and stands up, all casual, just walking around her grandfather's basement, looking at stuff, picking up some items, chatting with her new man. He also gets up from the couch and he's following her around. And Jenny talks about how sorry she is that Julian was trapped in a tiny closet all that time. So she heads into the room where the shadow people were kept and where her grandfather was yoinked. It's empty now, so opening the door is fine. And Julian follows her inside and talks about how cramped it was to be trapped in there all those years. And he's like, oh, there's some bad memories in here. I kind of don't want to be in here, babe. And she's like, we can make better memories. And so she initiates another quick makeout session. Just, okay. Jenny, I know that you're up to something here, but like, does it really have to be full tongue? Like, does it really have to be breathless and urgent and passionate? She's trying to have her shadow cake and eat it too. While Julian's distracted by all this, Jenny rips away from him all of a sudden and runs out of the room and slams the door, thus trapping him inside. And then she does what she saw her grandfather do in her memory, and she draws the rune of constraint in the air and recites the word that she heard her grandfather recite. Then she stops, and she hears nothing. Silence. Julian is now trapped in there, and he ain't happy. Jenny dashes up the stairs and books it up to the portal. She has about 10 minutes left before it closes, so by the time she makes it all the way back into the game shop room, all of her friends are still waiting for her, loyally, and they're surprised to actually see her running towards them. At this point, she looks at the clock and they have 1 minute before the portal closes. She's screaming at her friend. She's like, go, 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 like it's some sort of special ops moment. Of all the people, Zach lingers behind for a second, and he's like, Jenny, where is he? And Jenny's like, we do not have time for you to suddenly be possessive of me, half-cousin. Dee, Audrey, Michael, and Zach are all through the portal. Jenny and Tom are the last ones to go. They hold hands. They skydive at the door. They're all free. The entire gang wake up back in Jenny's house. For a second, they wonder if this was all just a dream. Maybe Audrey had slipped some LSD into the stir fry. But they notice that Summer isn't there and that it couldn't have been a dream. Everyone thinks they're safe and sound, but Dee points out that Jenny still has her betrothal ring on. Uh-oh. Jenny is gangster mode. She don't give a rat's ass. She crushes the paper dollhouse, throws everything back into the box, including the wedding ring. She tapes the box back up and makes a mental note to destroy it. And Audrey is like, wow, I cannot believe how good of an actress you are, because like the whole thing back there with Julian, like I almost thought that you had feelings for him for a second. And Jenny's like, no, like of course not. She gives one last stare at the paper doll of Julian, and she oddly feels a pang of regret. Regret? Whoa. She oddly feels a pang of regret. She knows she's given up the most exciting thing that's ever gonna happen to her. Now the group dynamics have changed. Audrey is more openly affectionate towards her BF Michael. Dee is still pretty much Dee, but she's realized that you can't fight every problem with a drop kick. Zach is finally being present and engaging in the conversations they're having. Tom is now humbled and willing to step down from trying to be the group leader all the time. Jenny tells her friends that they can all get through their new trauma together, and she's filled with more confidence than she ever was. A while later, the group is dispersed through the house, and Dee gets ready to call the police about Summer's disappearance. Meanwhile, Tom pulls Jenny aside and he shows her the scrap of paper that he somehow still has of his nightmare drawing. It is a drawing of a rat, but then the rat's crossed out, and in the middle is a drawing of Jenny. Tom says, "Babe, my worst nightmare is losing you. I love you as much as Julian did. Wait, no, even more than that." And Jenny immediately is like, I love you too. Like she does commit to it, but she knows for a fact that she's settling for Tom when there's a tiny part of her that isn't into it anymore. But she decides to stuff that deep into the mental vault and tells him that she loves him. And also she decides to never tell Tom the various shenanigans that her and Julian had gotten up to. She's just gonna keep that hidden from him forever. Yeah, that's a healthy relationship, all right. Just then, the sound of glass breaking in the living room. What? Everyone rushes out and sees two dark figures stealing the white game box and leaping through the back door and over their fence or whatever. Jenny has a split second where she thinks she recognizes the two guys, almost like the ones she had seen in the beginning of the story. But then she makes herself forget about it. I think Jenny's toxic trait is seeing some messed up shit and then going, nah, let's just move on. The last scene in the book. Two boys have stolen the white game box. They are revealed to be the same guys from earlier in the story. In fact, somehow, they're still wearing the same clothes when Jenny had seen them earlier at 5 p.m. So you're telling me they've been up for like 12 hours doing nothing this whole time? And they just happened to find Jenny's house, recognize her, recognize the box on the table, and make an effort to steal it? So I guess I know why we have two sequels to this story. Because they're going to obviously go inside the game and shenanigans are going to happen. That's it for book 1 of The Forbidden Game. I'm not too unhappy with the story. I think from the time it was written, it's very much a product of the culture. The one thing I really don't like is how LJ writes Dee. Every single time she talks about her character, it's either to mention her dark ebony skin or to mention her African heritage, or worse, to describe her animalistic tendencies. There's like a sentence where LJ describes her smile as like barbaric. There's too many layers of it. Besides that, Julian, of course, is a whiny piss baby, and it's good that he lost in the end, even though I do love him a little bit. I just hate how there's no in-between option for Jenny. Clearly, the book is trying to portray her as being stuck in a suffocating relationship with Tom, but what's her alternative? Hooking up with her half-cousin? Allowing herself to be caught and bottled by an ancient demonic force? Girl just don't got options. Audrey is all right. I like her character well enough. Michael is, I feel like he deserves to not be verbally abused by Audrey because he's genuinely pretty innocent and chill as a character. Tom is bland and flavorless. I hate to say this, but I do actually like Zach the most out of all of the male friends that Jenny has, simply because he says nothing for most of the book. Jenny is hard to pin down. She's not super witty. She has just enough intelligence to fool Julian, and she's not super rude. She has just enough sassiness to stand up for herself. Basically, I'm saying her personality is always tailored to the situation, and she's never too extreme in any one way or the other. She's mostly lukewarm, and she's so passive as a character. Like, most of this book is her stumbling into a situation and just reacting to it. And the only agency she has is when she regains her nightmare memory and when she tricks Julian at the very end. But I don't dislike her at all. Like, Jenny and I would be friends. I would go over to her house for movie night. I just wouldn't go to cookout at 3 a.m. with her. Like, does that make sense? But who knows? All of that may change with the second book of the Forbidden Game series. That's all I have for now, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed the dumb visuals that I came up with. I'm not even close to being a professional video editor, so I was really working with the tools that I had. If you had a lot of fun, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, whatever you fancy most. It makes my whole day when I see someone comment, and it gives me a chance to interact with you guys. And if you're interested in the book series, you can always buy your own copy and read ahead if you want, because then it can feel like a cute little book club moment. Yeah, but I really think I have to go. It seems like there's an unmarked white box in the doorway of my bedroom that wasn't there before. That's weird. Okay. Yeah, I think I could see some glowing runes on the side of the box. That's pretty interesting. I wonder what's inside of it. Yeah, a little bit of an ominous aura emanating from it. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm gonna go check it out. So what's the worst that can happen? Okay, goodbye. Can I say something really quick? What happened to dress up games? It used to be that they would feature a single avatar with maximum customization options for hair, skin tone, makeup, tops, and bottoms. But when I went to try and find good quality dress up characters, like a visual gag for the video, what is this new trend? It's like every single game now has pre-designed girls with predetermined names, and you can only change their makeup and clothes. Like, you can't really change their hairstyle, color. There's very limited hairstyle options. There's no skin tone options. So whatever girl you get, you get. Dressupgames.com. I want to have full autonomy over my character design. And every single one of them is branded the exact same. Not to mention the ridiculous amounts of ads on every page. In fact, I think they started doing this system because you're forced to do this character's makeup and then watch an ad and then do this character's accessories. But you can't get a PNG of the character until you play all of the other characters, which means you have to watch no less than 4 advertisements in one game because you've been playing for 4 characters that you don't care about. And it was so hard to search for characters that looked like the descriptions of the book that I wanted. I know I gave these website developers so much ad revenue. It's so dystopian. It's so bleak. Okay, weird rant over.